What up, it's your boy Roy Jones Jr. and you're watching Lights Out.
This is Faisal Khan for Lights Out, proudly sponsored by Spartans Law, and this is podcast 58 of the Lights Out Boxing podcast. It has been a while, and we are in undisputed city, and I'm delighted to be joined by the main man himself, Mr. Mohsin Gulsher, aka Ron, who looks like he's had a hard day at work, but there was no way I was letting him get out of tonight's podcast. Ron, how you doing, mate?
Absolutely well, man. Good to see you, man. Good to be back on again.
Yeah, obviously we've not been able to do a podcast for quite a while. Reason being is our studio's been kind of occupied. We haven't been able to gain access to it, but the studio hopefully will be back with us within the next week or so. So we're going to have to make do with the good old Zoom. Apologies for any lack of visual quality. My camera on my laptop's playing up, so I've had to go back to the good old webcam. Ron, we've had some good old fun times with these webcams back in the days, haven't we, Ron? I'm only joking. Right, before we get started, just wanted to remind the viewers out there, if they haven't already, please make sure you hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and share. Check us out on all the social media platforms. Links are below in the description. And if you want to listen to this podcast on any of the audio platforms, again, links are below in the description. Let's get started because it was a busy night of boxing on Saturday night. We'll start with the undisputed middleweight clash in the women's section of boxing. Claressa Shields came over to the UK and showed everybody why she is the greatest woman of all time by defeating Savannah Marshall to become a three-time undisputed world champion. Before we talk about the fight, Ron, I've got to ask you the million-dollar question. Are we potentially looking at probably the greatest boxer ever right now in terms of men's and women's boxing? If we had to combine them, could we say Claressa Shields is up there in that list?
Well, she's got I mean, that was a very defining fight, beating Savannah Marshall. That was the toughest fight of her career, and she came through that very well. What is she now? 5-time champion now? 5 different weights.
Yep.
You know, the only ever kind of like mark on her record was that Savannah Marshall defeat in the amateur days, and she's corrected that now. And you know what a performance that was as well, and I really enjoyed it. You know, she's got that bit of Floyd Mayweather kind of air about her, but the female version. You know, the arrogance, but she's got these skills to back it up. You know, she's not all talk. You know, that performance outlined that absolutely. You know, really thoroughly enjoyed that fight. You know, really put boxing into a good light again. You know, because considering the week before, you know, boxing was in a dark place. So well done to her. You know, she people of Flint, Michigan must be really proud of her, what her achievements and what she's come through. You know, I mean, I've learned about her as a person and what she's been through. You know, in her life. You know, she's a rape victim. You know, she's come through that, and she's had to kind of really persevere and make a name for herself. And she's got an amazing amateur record, Olympic record, and in the pros, you know, look what she's done. 5-time champion. You know, need I say more?
No, 100%. And then you got to look at what she achieved in the amateurs in the Olympic Games. I believe it is 2-time Olympic gold medal.
Yeah.
Do you know what, Ron? I was obviously fight week. I was rooting for Savannah Marshall. Of course, we like to root for our own fighters, but I have to say, you got to take your hats off to Claressa Shields. She was magnificent on the night. Savannah Marshall, fair play to her as well. She gave as good as she got. She made it a very competitive fight. But I just think when we talk about the greatest fighters of all time, you know, you talk about the Alis and the Mayweathers and the Sugar Ray Robinsons, and when you compare men and women's boxing, I think this lady's easily the top 4, top 5. It wouldn't surprise me if people have her down as the greatest fighter of all time. The accomplishments, the what she's achieved are on another level. She's a phenomenal athlete. The only thing that was kind of shadowing over her was this defeat to Savannah in the amateur days. But she's right that wrong, and an amazing performance as well. We'll talk a bit about the fight. I had her winning 6 or 7 out of the 10 rounds. I thought it was pretty. I thought she dominated the majority of the early stages of the fight. I think she set the tone really nice and early.
Yeah, very aggressive, very fast start. I didn't see that coming. Very fast hands. That footwork was immaculate. Very good timing. She countered Savannah Marshall really well. And she was prepared to trade as well. That's what I really liked about her. And she was she avoided those power punches, what Savannah Marshall was throwing back. And she didn't look like she was on her feet. She was really adept at fighting off the ropes as well, which I thought was really admirable as well. So,
yeah, one of the things that I was really impressed with is how she reacted when she was backed up on the ropes, because everybody considers Savannah Marshall like the Deontay Wilder women's boxing with the power that she possesses. But I thought the game plan, the tactics to start off fast and to sort of reel Savannah in to make it a sort of a fight in the pocket was really good. And I actually was saying to a friend of ours during the fight, watching it with him, that Savannah Marshall just needs to keep her distance and get behind the jab. And she never let her execute a game plan. And I thought Claressa on the night was fantastic. But listen, I feel for Savannah. I really do. I really do feel for her. I thought she put up a good performance. But I just think Claressa was just a level above on the night. And I think, the question has been answered. Who is she really the greatest woman of all time? Can she avenge that defeat from the amateur days? And, she made it look pretty comfortable in the end. In terms of what's next for both fighters, Ben Shalom, I watched an interview of him and Dimitri Salita, and they both said that they'd be interested in doing a rematch, but it has to go to America, and this is rightfully so. I mean, now that Claressa holds all the belts, is a rematch something you'd want to see between them two? Do you think Savannah can beat her if there is a rematch in America, Ron?
I don't see her beating her at this very moment in time, unfortunately, sadly. I'd love to say yes. I think, you've got to have a rematch at some point, because there's not much else out there in the division. Of all the fights that Claressa Shields has had, that's been her toughest opponent. That's someone, she dragged her into a war, something that Claressa Shields hasn't been used to. She's had it her own way a lot in her fights. But it was a great kind of event for women's boxing, boxing in general, really. Really good showpiece that was. It was a great, main event. I'd love to see it again in America. Rightly so, like you said. Done it in Britain. Was supposed to happen 5 weeks ago. Unfortunately, couldn't happen. And that's a testament to her, that she kept herself in shape. 5 weeks later, came back, did the business, is the undisputed champion, and walks away with all the belts.
Yeah, exactly. And you have to give credit to both women. I mean, the fight was supposed to happen 5 weeks ago, but it didn't due to the Queen passing away. And, she stuck to her game plan. She said she was going to do what she did. Can't take nothing away from her. I'd love to see a rematch. I think do you know what? To be honest with you, I remember during the build-up to fight week 5 weeks ago, Peter Fury said, listen, apart from these two fighters, the division is shit. And he's right. I don't think Claressa will want to go to 168 pounds, because I believe the champion, French Dezern, I think Clarissa's already beaten her. And speaking to Peter Fury at fight week, he said if Savannah was to win, they will definitely be pushing up to 168 or maybe even light heavyweight. But I think they'd definitely be interested in a rematch. And I think the rematch, generates a lot of money. But when you talk about numbers, you've got to give credit to both ladies. Over 2 million viewers tuned in to watch that fight. An absolutely astonishing record. And I said something on our WhatsApp group. I said that women's boxing right now is going in the right direction, and it is really showing men's boxing why everything is being done the right way in women's boxing. We're getting the best fighting the best. We saw Katie Taylor fight Amanda Serrano in April. We're going to get that fight again. I can guarantee you it's going to happen. And we've just had these two fight each other. We're seeing the best fighting the best, regardless of what the quality of women's boxing. We're seeing the best fighting the best, and this is exactly why I think women's boxing is on another level right now.
I just want to add, I mean, that undercard was, there's some really up and coming fighters in that on the undercard coming through as well. So, the future bodes well for women's boxing, and it was really positive to see the attendance at the live event. 35% women. That's unheard of at a boxing event. It's mainly 95, 90 plus male dominated. So really good. So it's bringing a new audience in, that wouldn't have considered boxing. And, these little girls that are growing up, my daughters, they've got these role models to kind of look up to and aspire to become like, to get into the sport of boxing.
100%, exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself. These fighters, I mean, as you said, it was an all-women's card, and they're inspiring millions around the world, and long may it continue. Let's talk a bit about the undercard, because the co-main event, there was a lot of needle between Mikaela Mayer and Alycia Baumgardner leading up to the fight. I actually watched a lot of the build-up to that fight. I watched the Trash Talk episode on the Top Rank YouTube channel. I watched the majority of the interviews. I saw what went down at the weigh-in. But obviously, Alycia Baumgardner come out on top in the end. She is now the unified super featherweight champion. But a lot of people are questioning the end result. On my scorecard, I had it 6-4 to Mikaela Mayer.
Wow. Okay.
Do you agree with Alycia Baumgardner getting the decision in the end, or do you think that the decision was controversial and that the right woman lost the fight on the night?
I mean, there was a lot of close rounds. It depended on how the judges were seeing that fight. What they were kind of really going for. I thought Mikaela Mayer was a lot more calculated, kind of used that jab well. And then Baumgardner, kind of landed more the power shots as well. So again, it really depends on what you prefer as a judge. But it was a close fight, and I wouldn't have been up in arms if they put it as a draw. But I can see the argument why people might have felt that Mikaela Mayer was robbed in that fight. But it was quite interesting to see after, in the post-fight, Baumgardner was very quick to say, no, there's no rematch. I'm not going to rematch her. I'm going to move on. I'm going to do my own thing. So that kind of says something as well. Maybe she was relieved. She's like, thank God for that. I don't want any more of that heat.
Yeah, I agree with those comments. I thought it was, you look at it, there's a lot of interest in that fight, and seen as the decision was controversial, you would have thought that Baumgardner would have been interested in a rematch. But obviously, Baumgardner now said that she wants to go out and become undisputed. But the money involved in a rematch with Mikaela Mayer would probably get a lot more than an undisputed catch, that's for sure. In terms of the fight, I thought it was a very good fight. Baumgardner started off very fast. I thought she won the first 3 rounds, and then after that, I just saw Mikaela Mayer just take over. She controlled the pace of the fight. She was on the front foot for most of it. I thought she landed the bigger shots. The end decision I don't agree with. But you know what, Ron? I would say one thing.
Would you have taken a draw?
Yeah, I would have been happy with a draw. But I thought Mikaela Mayer did enough to win that. I had her winning 6 of the 10 rounds. But Ron, I'll say one thing. It's very hard to score 2-minute rounds.
2-minute round, yeah.
I was discussing.
I think there's an argument, I mean, for women, the rounds to be increased to 2.5 minutes maybe, or 3,
rounds in
2 minutes is, blink and it's gone. The round finished. It feels like. I mean, that's what they're saying with championship boxing. That extra minute, we will be able to determine. We'll
Yeah.
kind of really clearly see out. Who's really got the who's got the character, the metal.
I agree.
This is too short.
No, I agree. They've got to change it from 2 to 3 minutes. It has to happen because, even watching the main event, I mean, a lot of people had Claressa Shields winning. I thought a lot of people's tweets, some of them had him winning 7 rounds, some had him winning 8 rounds. Those rounds are very close. Majority of these rounds are close, and they're too hard to judge over 2-minute rounds, which is why I think we should sort of look to move towards 3-minute rounds. Okay, if we're not going to do it for all of women's boxing, let's do it for these big, unified, undisputed clashes because, the judges get a lot of stick, but then you put yourself in their shoes. Judging 2-minute rounds, it's not easy. And I think there's a lot of controversy surrounding that fight because, they were all close rounds. And I just think that we need to look, if we're going to move in this direction where we're going to push women's boxing as much as men's boxing, we need to go from 10 rounds to 12 rounds, and we need to change that from 2-minute rounds to 3-minute rounds. But let's move on because let's talk about some more of the boxing action. The former WBC heavyweight world champion Deontay Wilder, the bronze bomber, returned in magnificent fashion, knocking out Robert Helenius in round 1. Now, it wasn't Tyson Fury, it wasn't Anthony Joshua, it was Alexander Usyk, but it was Wilder's first fight in a year. There were a lot of questions surrounding him. Has those 3 fights mentally gotten the better of Deontay Wilder? Will he ever get back to his best? Has he been found out for being just a knockout artist? Well, he proved a lot of people wrong. I mean, it took a lot to get back into the ring, especially after losing that 3rd fight to Tyson Fury. And I've got to say that was the best way to come back into boxing, by stopping Robert Helenius in round 1. Yes, you can't take too much of a first-round knockage run, but what did you learn from Wilder's performance on Saturday night?
That power is real. Robert Helenius isn't no bum. He's been on a good form recently. He's won his last 3 fights. And he's got a good chin on him. He's been in with well-known kind of fighters. I'm sure he's been in with Tyson Fury, Chisora.
Yeah.
Just trying to think, who else has he been with? Has he been with Dillian White? So he's a credible opponent, and he was making to look to have a name on his record. And if he had Deontay Wilder's name on his record, and there'd have been good night for his career for Deontay Wilder. So there was a lot riding on it for him, coming back after that long layoff against after the trilogy against Tyson Fury. And all credit to him, and it was good to see him come through that. And you can see in the press conference, the post fight, it's quite emotional for him as well. And that's what we want to see. The heavyweight division needs a Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder sells. Say what you want to say about his boxing skills, he has got power like no other. There's no one that punches harder than him. Period. He's got that kind of power that will put people to sleep. Just ask Dominic Brazil. Ask, obviously look at that, the expression on Helenius's face when he was kind of staring up into the sky. Think about all those brutal, vicious knockouts that he's achieved. So really, really happy that he's got that great performance. And who's next in his rest? AJ. You've got Usyk that he's been he was calling out as well. I think he'll want to build himself up again if he's going to have that full fight with Fury.
I mean, when you say, there are options, but the bottom line is I see only one fight for Deontay Wilder right now, and that's Alexander Usyk. Strictly because we all know Tyson Fury is fighting Chisora again. Eddie Hearn will want to risk putting AJ in with Wilder. I think AJ can't afford a 3rd loss. I think the perfect fight to make is Alexander Usyk. Let's see how Usyk deals with Wilder's power. I mean, you know how you just said, ask Brazil what that power's like. Well, don't forget, Wilder's knocked the best heavyweight in the world in Tyson
Down
Fury
four
times.
times.
This guy is going to land. I mean, I've said it before and I'll say again, he's an awful boxer. But because he's got that kryptonite of a right hand, that's what makes him entertaining. That's the one thing you never know. And I think Tyson Fury said that. With Wilder, you've got to be perfect for every second of the fight because all he needs is... That's the beauty of Deontay Wilder. Now, yeah, I mean, you can't really look too much into him beating Robert Helenius, regardless of the run that he's been on. But as I said, mentally and physically, that trilogy fight took a lot out of Deontay Wilder. The change in trainers, the accusations he was throwing towards Tyson Fury, coming in there his career heaviest in the third fight. So it was good to see him get back in the ring. I'm glad he is because he brings something different to the heavyweight division. And as long as he's got a right hand run, he is going to be a threat to anybody who he fights. He could lose 5 fights in a row. He could win 5 fights in a row. He is a massive threat. I really like the Alexander Usyk fight because I still say that Joshua never pushed Usyk the way everybody said he did and the way people expected him to. I feel that Wilder knows he can't beat him over 12 rounds. But what Wilder can do is he can knock out Usyk. He can knock any heavyweight out. Do I see that fight happening next? No, I don't. I honestly do think next that Wilder fights Ruiz. But if I had to pick Wilder's next opponent, I'd put him in with Alexander Usyk. It's an exciting fight. It'd be good to see Usyk fight another giant of a heavyweight, see how he gets on. I think it's a good match.
Can I name a few opponents that Wilder could potentially fight? If obviously, our very own Joy Joyce.
It's another good fight.
Man who has got a chin like none other. And the guy who's got the best right hand like none other.
Yeah.
Let's put him to the test and see, which one kind of holds out. There's obviously, Dillian White as well. That would be another fight. Andy Ruiz, yeah, that's most likely and easier to happen because they're part of the same promotional team. So, yeah, I mean, I've named a few fights there. I'd be interested to see how what pans out, how it pans out for them.
Well, yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens next because the heavyweight division is exciting and we want to see the best fighting the best, and only time will tell. Talk about another undisputed clash, which was Devin Haney versus George Kambosos 2 in Australia. Devin Haney repeating what went down in the first fight by beating Kambosos for a second time. Pretty comfortable, more comfortable than the first fight, in my opinion. It was an undisputed clash, but there was no noise about it, which I've found really disappointing. Yeah, there was a full night of boxing on, but this is an undisputed fight. You expect there to be some hoorah about it. You expect there to be some sort of build up to it. There was none of that. The only thing I found pretty entertaining during the build up to the fight was Devin Haney's old man, the way he was trying to sort of, put it on Team Kambosos. But the fight itself, like I said, I thought Haney was comfortable. I didn't see Kambosos trouble him at all. What next for Devin Haney? There's a lot of fights out there.
Man, he's got his. I just want to say, I mean, if I can make a few little comments. I mean, from what I heard, Kambosos changed up his team, his manager, his coach. He did take a different approach to coming in that fight. I was studying that fight very closely, and I noticed that he was trying to mix it up a little bit, changing, going from southpaw, to orthodox, just trying different things, and it just, I think Haney was just far too good for him, which we know, timing was immaculate. That's what landed him, and then now your question is, he's come through that, he's got that all dealt with now, no rematches now after that.
I hope not.
God, he wants. I mean, I'm hearing, he's called out Lomachenko. That's a great fight, great name to have on your CV, especially for a 24-year-old. And if he wins that fight, then he has got that claim to fame of being the next Mayweather. He's young, he's undefeated, and he fights. He's got a great style about him. That division is, it's one of the most frustrating divisions, but the exciting division at the same time. You know, we've got the who's who of boxing. We know me and you have spoken about this. You know, we can speak about it until the cows come home. There's obviously Lomachenko. There's Ryan Garcia. There's Gervonta Davis. I'm hearing Shakur Stevenson might kind of step up into that division as well. Kambosos is, you know, he'll come back again. He'll fight someone on that ladder. Am I missing anyone? Josh Taylor, is he looking to move up into that division?
Josh Taylor's a weight above.
Is that my apologies? Sorry. Yeah. So look, I've just given you 5, world-class names there. So, you know, he's the man. You know, he's the king. Now, what will he do? Will he stick around or will he move up or wait?
I mean, you got to look at it. Josh Taylor, if he was to go up in weight, Josh Taylor did hold a lot of the belts at super lightweight, but he vacated them. I don't think super lightweights is as exciting as it should be, but I do think the money maker is the Lomachenko fight next, because you know you got the social media kings in Ryan Garcia and Gervonta Davis going back and forth.
Well, they look like is that a done deal? Them two fighting?
I don't want to waste time on it, Ron, because it's just, again, it's, you know, that fight's not going to happen. I can't see it happening. They're just both, you know, there's more heat on social media with them two than there ever will be in a boxing ring. That fight's not going to happen. I can't see it happening. I can't see Crawford and Spence happening. So, but Lomachenko does have a fight coming up soon. And I think if Lomachenko wins that fight, listen, Devin Haney's with Top Rank, Lomachenko's with Top Rank. You know, it's like bread and butter together. It's just a perfect fight to make. I think right about now, Lomachenko brings a really, really good challenge. You know, he's had a great career in boxing. He's got a point to prove after losing to Teofimo Lopez back in 2020. It really is his sort of like his last journey in boxing. Can he become a world champion again? I think it's a great fight. I think it's a fight that Bob Arum should be looking to make as soon as Lomachenko gets his next fight at a win. That's obviously if he wins that fight. And I don't really see Devin Haney looking at anyone else. I mean, in all honesty, I'd love him to fight Shakur Stevenson, but I think Shakur Stevenson has to have a fight at this weight to get used to
Exactly. He's moving up, and he's at 130 he's moving up to 135. So he'll need a fight to kind of get him used to the weight, used to that power. But he's going to be a force to be reckoned with himself.
Exactly, and he wouldn't want to throw himself in the deep end straight away. So I think it makes sense to make the fight between Haney and Lomachenko. That's obviously if Lomachenko wins his next fight. As for Kambosos, I've got a lot of respect for Kambosos. I mean, he's lost twice, yes, but he's lost to a good fighter, and he stunned everybody when he beat Teofimo Lopez. So, you know, I mean, look, Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney, if you can't get a fight with each other, Kambosos is a former world champion. He's achieved a lot more than they have in their career so far. So that's a perfect fight. There's lots of fights out there. Maybe Kambosos might like the idea of going up away. You know, we'll have to wait and see. We'll talk a bit more about Saturday night's action. Caleb Plant returned after
Anthony Dirrell, yeah.
With a knockout victory over Anthony Dirrell. I've got to say that celebration was, it was on another level. But listen, again, another fighter that had a point to prove. And Dirrell's been around for a long time, but he's an experienced fighter. He's a former world champion. What do you do next with Caleb Plant? You know, you got Canelo at super middleweight who holds all the belts. You know, I can't see him getting a rematch with Canelo anytime soon. What's next for Caleb Plant?
That's $1 million question, isn't it? I mean, like, what do you do? The guy who has the belts, you know, who you stepped up against, fought valiantly. You know, I thought it was a great, you know, good, decent performance that you put up against him, but he came up short. Now, you know, unless you can really change up your whole game plan, what do you do? I mean, like, does he move up a weight division, or does he cut weight? I'm lost for words. I genuinely don't. I feel for the guy. You know, he's, you know, if he was in any other division, then fine. But he's in a division with, you know, one of the the pound for pound king, you know, in boxing.
It's a tricky one because, I mean, unless Canelo vacates, which I think he will do because he's beaten everybody at super middleweight, there's no need to hold on to those belts any longer. I mean, there's a fight with Andrade Demetrius Andrade, which I like the idea of. Benavidez is another good fight. Billy Joe Saunders, is he going to come back? Yes or no? We don't know. I look. I mean, I like the idea of Eubank Jr. going up to 168 pounds and having a crack at him. I think that's a decent fight as well. You know what went down with Eubank Jr. a couple of weeks ago. Golovkin, will you want to stay at 168 pounds? There are big fights out there, but it's just kind of like, as long as Canelo's got the belts, will he vacate? I'm pretty sure he will have to because of all how the governing bodies work. But it's a tough one because, he will consider himself as the second best fighter, and he will consider himself as the sort of A side apart from Golovkin if he was to fight anybody else. So that matchmaking becomes a bit difficult. I don't see him moving up to light heavyweight. I think there's just too much quality.
No, I mean it was just just trying to speculate whether what he does in that situation. But look, there are some really good names there that you've just rolled off off your tongue there. So they would be good fights, but you don't want to fight for nothing. You want to fight for something, for a title, for a belt. That's the name of the game now. These boys, they're making that much, and they want to maximize how much money they can make from these fights.
I do think the fight with Eubank Jr. is something I'd like to see. I'd like to see Eubank Jr. go up to 168 pounds now. I think it's a great fight, and I'm pretty sure Wasserman would definitely do that fight in a heartbeat because we need to get Eubank Jr. in a big fight next. And obviously we'll have to talk a bit about the whole Eubank Jr. Conor Benn situation because before obviously Saturday night's boxing action, boxing was just on a massive downer because of Conor Benn failing a drugs test for using a banned substance. It's a tough one, with what's gone down. I don't think there's going to be any sort of outcome for a while. Question mark still in the air regarding towards a B sample, but Eubank Senior done a sort of like an interview today, and his comments were that Conor Benn is not to blame, that he's innocent, and that his team is to blame. Look, Ron, I mean, my stance on this is that if you've taken a performance-enhancing drug, an illegal substance, you need to be banned. I'm not going to comment on how long the ban should be, and I do want to try and give Conor the benefit of the doubt here because I'm a massive fan of Conor Benn, and I'm hoping that there is, another side to this story, but we can only go by what we know now. Where do you stand on everything right now? Because we've not discussed this. We've not done a podcast for a while, but what is your honest take on what you see happening next? I mean, what's your feeling towards this?
Oh God, I mean, I don't know if you saw the historical tweets or from his doctor or his
Dr. Usman.
guy. Usman. I forgot his surname. And he said some things that kind of raised suspicion. I mean, they're historical because obviously this is done some time ago, and he made some comments about, you'd be, what did he say? He said something along the lines of, you'd be an idiot to fail a drug test because there's lots of ways to kind of cover it up if you are taking performance enhancing drugs. So what Conor Benn had in his system, which is a female hormone drug, I think it was, for pregnancy or whatever it was. Apparently that's to mask, other types of drugs. Look, you've got to be careful with what you put in your system. As an athlete, you've got to know, right, you've got to be aware of what's on the allowed substances and what's not allowed. Now, Conor Benn, from following him from his career throughout, he eats, lives, and sleeps boxing. He's a gym rat. He's always looking in good shape. And it was a massive shock to me that when I found out that he had tested positive. And he's been very vocal in his kind of saying that he's innocent. but you can't put it on his team and say, you know, he's got to take ownership of that and say, you know, whatever, we'll get all the information and we can move on forward from that. But it's just sad. I just think it's, you know, really bad for boxing. Not done him any favors in his career now. He's he's still a young man. You know, in terms of bans, you know, we're hearing sometimes 2 years, 4 years. You know, the whole charade, you know, how it all played out, you know, from what we were hearing, you know, it was leaked to the press. Now, if it wasn't leaked to the press, would the fight still have continued? That's a question mark. You know, think about for boxing, what does that say? You know, how many other fighters are, you know, fights have gone ahead, but because they haven't been leaked to the, you know, to the press.
Yeah, look, I agree with everything you said there, Ron. I was out in Turkey at the time, and you know, I was gutted to have been missing fight week itself, but even more gutted to hear that the fight never went ahead. But I'm glad, you know, for the sake of boxing, that the fight never went ahead in the end. Look, I again, I'm a massive fan of Conor Benn. I really like how far he's come in boxing. I like the, you know, the road that he's been on, but I'd like to think that I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I still want to see what the outcome of the B sample is, but we can only go by what we know right now. And if the B sample does come out positive, which, you know, I don't know why it's taking so long for us to be given a B sample.
I think the B sample, they're not really fussed about the B sample because they know the sketch.
You've got to remember one thing. Didn't White fail the drugs test, and then before his fight with Marius Wack, and then the B sample come out negative. So you've got to give this guy the benefit of the doubt.
I think they would have done that already. I think they've kind of written off the B sample. But I think they've accepted, right, that we have a problem. It's a positive result.
Oh, finishing my point. I mean, you know, another thing that obviously that's come out is that apparently, you know, he failed a drugs test leading up to one of his other fights, and it wasn't leaked out to anybody. You know, I mean, if all of this is true, then I'm sorry, Ron, but everybody from the top of this team to the bottom has to take full responsibility and needs to be thrown out of boxing. You know, one person that's really going to take a lot of backlash in this is Eddie Hearn, because
rightly so.
He's covered up the fact that his fighters failed drugs past. And this is a promoter, a guy that's promoted British boxing, you know, who's promoting boxing in America to another level. If this does come out that he's failed a drugs test in the past and Eddie Hearn's known about this, then they've all got to go. Every single one of them, from top to bottom, they've got to be removed from the sport because, you know, you look at it, you know, Eubank Jr. was coming down in weight, you know, there's the whole thing about the rehydration, you know, regardless of whatever the substance was, you know, Eubank Jr. was in a very dangerous position had that fight gone ahead. And you've only got to listen to the interview I did with Spencer Oliver. You know, it's a bad look for boxing, and your boxing has to learn from this. It has to, you know, when are we going to get to a point in this sport when fighters stop cheating? Because it's bad for boxing. It's ruining the sport completely.
Touching on that, did you hear the interview with Senior with Spencer Fearon? That was quite powerful with what Senior said about, you know, they were like killing my son. You know, they wanted me to be part of this and accomplice to this. You know, normally I would have thought, all right, you know, Senior, you're kind of blowing this out of proportion, but, you know, think about the rehydration clause, you know, and think about, you know, Conor Benn coming in with a positive result. So there were a lot of things that were going against Eubank Jr. in that fight. Well, he was still prepared to fight. He was still prepared to go, you know, let's go.
Well, the fight never happened, and I'm glad it never happened.
Yeah.
We can outcome in this now because this is, you know, I mean, I'm pretty sure pundits And I was obviously at fight week for Shields Marshall, and you can tell like the pundits were getting fed up with these questions. Everybody's sort of getting to that point now where they want an answer as to what happens next, and hopefully boxing learns from this, and boxing can sort of just
Move on, yeah.
learn from this. And these mistakes can't happen again. But I'm going to stick by what I said. If there are people around this team that knew about this, that hid this leading up to previous fights, these people need to be removed from the sport. And I don't care if it's his promoter, I don't care if it's his manager, whoever it is, whoever knew. If someone's known about this kid taking, banned substances to improve his, to help him improve in the ring, you're endangering other fighters' lives, and heaven forbid something. We've seen fighters over the last few years lose their life in the ring. This is a very serious matter. It's a serious matter. I hope we get to the bottom of it. Ron, last topic, because I don't want to spend more time talking about the whole Conor Benn, Chris Eubank Jr. situation. I just hope we get the truth, and I hope we get the best positive outcome. Rumours going around that we could be set for December the 3rd for Tyson Fury to take on Derek Chisora free in the trilogy fight at the Tottenham Hotspurs Stadium. Again, another disappointing scene in boxing where we thought we were going to get the Fury-Joshua fight. That fell through. But we look as if we're set for a third fight between Fury and Chisora. Ron, break it down to me. Excited for it? Looking forward to it? How do you feel about a third fight between Fury and Chisora?
Does that tell you enough?
Yeah, I think the expression in your face.
Look, the only reason a fight should happen a third time, if the first two fights were close, it was a war, or it weren't even close. That's the thing, Tyson Fury. I don't know how Tyson Fury came to that decision. I'm going to fight Chisora again. Like, what process went through his mind to say? Apparently, he made this decision a long while ago. That and fair play for Chisora. He gets a really good payday. He gets a massive stadium fight. At best, Chisora has sells out the O2, but is it a box office, pay-per-view event? I wouldn't be paying that money. I don't think people would, AJ, different story, even though AJ's not, coming off the back of 2 defeats to Usyk. I just don't really see the sense in this, and why. What's to be gained out for anyone. Chisora just gets more money. He'll make a good couple of million out of this. And Chisora actually, this is it. This sums up the fight. Chisora says, "You beat me." Did you see that interview they had? I can't remember which. I think it was a Joyce fight, and they were, they were together and they were back and forth. And he says, "Look, you beat me." Chisora actually said those words. Now he's stepping into the ring with him. So it's all about money. It's not about, I can have a crack at the WBC or whatever title that the WBC that the Tyson Fury holds. I can have a crack at that.
Yeah,
it's a really strange one, and I'm not really excited. I would have preferred Char, if anything. A different opponent. Fine, not the greatest. I would have preferred Andy Ruiz, fine, he was cussing AJ for beating a fat man. Well, let's see how you get on. And I would have, you would have wiped the floor with him as well. So
look, I agree with you. I would have preferred a Manuel Char fight instead. We've got to take the positives from this fight. Is in the ring, is it a great fight? No, I've just seen it being exactly the same as the first 2 fights. I think a press conference, you might get a bit of needle. I think you get a lot of entertainment during, press conferences and weigh-ins. But it's just, when did they last fight? 2014 was, come on. Really.
And I think Chisora gassed out. I think, didn't he? Then he just, he quit on the stool because I think that was the ending of that fight, wasn't it?
I remember Frank Warren doing an interview regarding those fights, and at the time he was promoting Chisora, and he goes, "I didn't have him winning the round." Now Frank Warren's promoting arguably one of the biggest faces in boxing. Surely he's got to be saying to him, "Forget Chisora. as you said, there's Ruiz out there. There is Manuel Shaw out there. There's Joe Joyce out there. There's a full fight with Wilder out there. If you really, really want to fight somebody, I mean, I'd be up for a full fight with Wilder. I mean, all 3 fights.
I think Wilder's on a rebuilding stage at the moment, so that's out of the question.
You look at in hindsight, it's what would you rather see? Would you rather see Wilder Fury?
Oh yeah, most definitely. If you had to pick, say to me, what fight would you rather have next? I would have said Wilder all day long. But it's not the right fight for Wilder at this very moment in time.
But either way, that is probably the next fight. I just think Fury wins it inside 5 rounds, and I think he retires Chisora. I mean, look, this is back to my point earlier on during this podcast. Women's boxing right now up there, men's boxing there. There's a massive golfing class right now. We're getting the best fighting the best. We're getting these big fights. We're not getting these fights where we're not getting fights that we don't want to see. I mean, at the start of the year, we all said in women's boxing, the fights we want to see are Taylor Serrano. We want to see Shields versus Marshall. And it's October, we've seen both those fights. Now, did we get to see Spence versus Crawford this year? No, and I don't think it's going to happen. Have we seen Fury versus Joshua this year? No, and it's not going to happen.
Anyone worthwhile in the lightweight division fighting each other? No.
Yeah, exactly. We talk about the new 4 Kings generation, the new Hagler, Hearn, Leonards and Duran era. That's not happened. So it's just, I mean, Canelo versus Golovkin 3 should have been a spectacle. There was no noise about that fight whatsoever. So
I think that was, that was a few years too late. 100. Maybe 2 years too late that was after the second fight.
Yeah. Before we end the podcast, just a couple of questions from our fans. Thank you for those guys for getting involved on our social media platform, Instagram. DD Sports said, and again, guys, check out DD Sports, a fantastic Instagram page covering all the sports. DD Sports, bringing you the sports. That's their slogan. I'll aim this question at Ron. Ron, how do you see Wilder getting on against Usyk?
I think what you said earlier, that Fury said, you have to be switched on all the time against someone like Wilder. I think tactically, I think Usyk, there's not many better boxers. He's on level with Fury in terms of kind of like playing chess when he's boxing. Could he frustrate the hell out of Wilder? That'd be an interesting fight. I think I'd love to see that fight. And I think Usyk wins that, just absolutely outboxes him and masterclasses him. And Usyk's shown that he's got a bit of a chin on him. Against AJ, he did cop a few, but I still see Usyk winning that fight on points.
Another question from More Boxing, please. This question again, I'll ask to Ron. What is the main reason why we've not seen Garcia, Tank, Haney, and all these guys fight each other?
God, I generally don't know what the issue is. I think, is it egos? It's who's the A side, who's the B side? Is it promotional companies? There is no excuse, let's be honest. They all should be kind of making a name for themselves. I mean, a lot of them kind of pull out with names and fights, boxers I've not really heard of. I'm thinking, and I'm crying and screaming out like, fight each other for God's sake. That will sell. That will kind of really stimulate that weight division even more than it has, because there's excellent kind of talent in that division. Now, I mean, there's talk of it done deal or something. They were back and forth with each other. Just guys, stop kind of teasing us and just get in the ring, with each other, and let's make these fights happen. In this generation, in our lifetimes, for God's sake.
Another one, Ron, from anonymous.
Can I ask you? I mean, Faisal, before why do you think those fights have not happened?
Egos.
Egos. Yeah. Okay.
I would take out Haney, Kambosos, Loma out of that equation. Just ask the social media kings, Tank and Garcia. Egos.
Teofimo as well. I mean,
he's fought Kambosos and he's fought Lomachenko.
So fair enough. fair play with Teofimo.
I mean, why has it not happened? Because of egos. Because, you know, one's being managed by Floyd Mayweather and does what Floyd Mayweather tells him to do, and the other guy is just more worried about whether he's got 8 million followers on Instagram or 10. Listen, they're both super talented fighters. They are amazing fighters, and they've got talent to become the face of boxing. But why they haven't fought each other yet, or why they don't want to fight anybody else, you know, it's beyond me. And I just really wish they get their act together. Another question from Mr. Anonymous. Ron.
Go for it.
And I'm going to ask you this question because I know you're a big fan of him. Do you feel as if Prince Naseem achieved enough in his career, or do you think he should have achieved a hell of a lot more?
I think for me, I've got a very soft spot for him. I think he retired, what was it, age of 29 or 30? Very, very, very early in his career, you know, after the first kind of mark on his record. And, you know, it was just a unsatisfactory way of kind of finishing off your career. You know, he had one comeback fight, and then, you know, I was expecting, you know, obviously this is a day years before kind of social media, and, you know, we were just waiting, you know, when was his next fight. You know, I think the hunger had gone for him. I think the injuries had kind of plagued up on him. I think his hands were always injured, and he was struggling to make weight. I mean, what a division he was in. Like, he could have faced a Mayweather. I think we did a pod on this, didn't we? A few years ago, where we were talking about him against Mayweather, how that would turn out. I think his heart wasn't in it anymore. So it's sad, you know. I think as a boxer, you just know when it's time to call quits, or to say goodbye. And he's made his money. He did what he had to do in America. No one did it better than him in the US. You know, people still talk about him, his boxing style. It's unmatched. There hasn't been a boxer like him. Faisal, you've been to boxing fights. You know, you talk to people like Johnny Nelson, who trained with him at the Ingle Gym. I mean, he was a pure entertainer, and from his ring entrances to his actual fighting style, there's been none other like him. You know, he set that kind of benchmark of a British boxer going over to the US under the lights and the bits and the glamour, you know, and he enjoyed himself doing it, you know, and I think he got himself out, kept his faculties, kept his brains, you know, and he's still involved in boxing. His son's kind of now, kind of coming up, making a name for himself. Well, let's see what happens there.
You know, I mean, I agree with what you just said, but I think for me the turning point was leaving Brendan Ingle. I think him and Brendan had, such an amazing relationship.
He's I agree, because he's such a unique fighter. I mean,
yeah.
But he did go with what's his name? Oh God, what's his name? Lennox Lewis's ex-trainer, man. Manuel Stewart.
Yeah, the late Manuel Stewart. Yeah, but I don't think he should have ever have left Brendan Ingle. But look, I mean, yes, entertaining, a great fighter, achieved a lot, done in America, gave us some fantastic nights, nonetheless. One final question, and this is from Boxing Beef Eater. Ron, if you could walk into the ring with any fighter, who would it be with and why?
What do you mean fighter-wise? I mean, like, in what sense?
I think the question is you can do a ring walk with any fighter, past or present, which one would it be with? Think back to all the entertaining ring walks. Which fighter would make you think, yeah, I'd love to do a ring walk with him one day in one of his fights?
I mean, I think it's going to be an intimidating Mike Tyson. Just no nonsense. I don't know if you've seen that fight when he comes in against Peter McNeely. It's just that, just gonna really look scary. I mean, I've got to give it to Peter McNeely. He gave it. He stood his ground and kind of fought him. But Mike Tyson, in his heyday, the way he entered that ring, vicious, like, so focused on its prey. If you wanted some pure entertainment, then no other like Naz.
That's where you're wrong. You want entertainment, Uzi Ahmed all the way, mate. No,
dear.
I'd love to come in with Fury. I mean, I just think that
Fair enough.
the second fight with Wilder, the ring entrance for the fight with Dillian White at Wembley, I just think, every fight that he has, his ring entrances get better and better. I remember when he fought Pianetta in Belfast, and that whole week Wilder had turned up, and there was rumors going around that he set to fight Wilder. Where's Wilder from? Tell us, Alabama.
Tuscaloosa, yeah, Alabama.
Sweet home, I just think the guy, when it comes to ring walks right now, is just on another level to anybody. Dylan Chima, the guy from India, comes out with the Indian drums, the dolki. I find that quite entertaining, but not for me.
A bit of Bangra. Yeah, I mean, great on him. Good on him, man. He's going to...
Something different. 100%.
But look, Naz was the one that set that bar, with the ring entrances.
Mm.
The guy came in a flying carpet. He came in a Cadillac. He had P. Diddy kind of rapping. That wasn't really the thing before, man. I mean, Naz, I remember one time I can't remember who he was fighting in. It was a Halloween event. I think he kind of punched a gravestone.
Yeah. Kevin Kelly.
Kevin Kelly, there you go.
No, what though, Ron? You talk about back in those days, ring walks weren't really a thing, but you mentioned Mike Tyson, mate. His ring walks are very intimidating. The towel on the head.
Man, I was shitting myself the way, just that look, that I'm here to do business. It's not about making. It's all the focus. I'm here to fight. Kind of thing.
Final one for you. I'm going to ask you a question, right? If I said to you, for £1 million, you have to spar Mike Tyson for one round for £1 million, and bear in mind he can come at you full force, would you do it?
Fucking hell, 1 million, man.
Mate,
I'd use that jab. I'd just try to keep him long, and try to use lateral movement. No, fuck no, man. You go and. I mean, Mike Tyson and the famous. What was it again? What style did he have? The peekaboo style, man. You've got no chance with that, man.
If I was allowed to wear earmuffs, then I'd definitely do it. That's for sure.
Nah, mate, Mike Tyson in his prime, man. He would eat you alive, man.
We'll definitely pick up something on Mike Tyson in the next podcast, because Ron, that's all we've got time for, mate. A pleasure as always. Thank you very much for joining us for podcast 58. To the viewers out there, if you haven't already, please make sure you hit that like button, and more importantly, for more future Lights Out boxing content, make sure you hit the subscribe button, turn on the bell for future notifications. Social media platforms and audio platforms are both below in the description. And yeah, just make sure you keep an eye on us for more future content. And thank you for listening to podcast 58 of the Lights Out Boxing podcast.